Hey, everybody, and welcome to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. And today I have an amazing guest. It's going to talk about some things that are of interest right now and some hot topics that are in many different communities. And that is the schooling programs and some of the issues many parents are running into now and what options they may have to make changes. So today my guest is Nancy DeLuca Stempel, and she has a lot to say about homeschooling and different programs and umbrellas. And I just want everyone to listen with open ears. And all of her links will be in the description if you have additional questions for her. And so, welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. I'm
It's
glad
good to
be
see you.
here. Good to see you too. Thank you so much for, interviewing and bringing this topic to the forefront, because more now than ever, people are really looking for options. Home education legality across the country has been since the early 80s. And so every state now has a homeschool law or bylaw that, kind of oversees that option, whether you're going to a private school, a public school, or homeschooling. So back in the early 80s, when I came to Maryland, I'm not from Maryland originally, I started to research, educational options, and I found the learning community. And so I first, with the Learning Community International, I'm the executive director. And when I first found the learning community, I found it as a parent wanting to home educate my child. And then I became an advisor for the learning community, and then the high school director, and now I'm the executive director. So I've been with the organization, almost since its inception. And originally, the learning community, once the bylaw was established in the state of Maryland, it was probably 83, the principal director of the learning community, Manfred Smith, was very instrumental in drafting that bylaw. And he was a public school teacher. And he said, you can't really change the public school system, but I'd like to create something that was an alternative that gave people more of a choice. So he was very instrumental in drafting that law, and then created the learning community. So in the state, the bylaw is that if you're going to become a homeschooler, you would then reach out to your local county of your state in Maryland, and you would create this intent to home educate. And you have to understand what the law is so you can comply with the law. And then a couple of times a year, a reviewer would meet with you, the parent, and make sure that you're complying with that bylaw. And in addition to having a reviewer from the county, you also had the option of enrolling with an umbrella program. And they were basically, okayed by the state, or, kind of sanctioned by the state or different organizations to oversee homeschoolers to make sure they were complying with the bylaw. And the learning community was one of those umbrellas. So that's one of our functions, is if people don't want to be reviewed by the county, they can be with a private organization like ours, and we can review them to make sure they're compliant with the homeschool bylaw.
Okay, but the learning community offers a lot more than that. So not just with the compliance. So could you maybe give a little description of, like, okay, let's say I'm a mom, I'm fed up with my school system in my county. I really want to spend more time with my kids. I really want to work with the education with my children. And now I would like to know more about homeschooling. And so I guess I would call maybe you and say, tell me a little bit about it. So here I am. Hello, Nancy. I'm a mom in the county. I don't know where you're located, but tell me a little bit about homeschooling, because I don't know much of anything. And then how you step in and walk me through all of this so I can make the best decision on behalf of my children.
Right. And so, like you said, originally, the learning community is more than just an umbrella. We're also a Maryland registered private school, K through 12. And we're accredited by Middle States Accreditation, which is the Mid-Atlantic Accreditation Agency that accredits all the private schools and colleges in the Mid-Atlantic states. So, and we've been around for a long time. So we do a lot more than just the umbrella. But then to answer your question, if someone calls me, I usually start asking them, because we're really about empowerment also. And it's not just about plugging people in and becoming a passive participant in the education of your children, but it's really about empowerment. And the learning community defines empowerment like helping people, facilitating parents and children with the skills and the abilities to make best choices for their life. That's how we see empowerment. And that's a kind of an overview. And there's a lot of definitions for empowerment. You see it, it's a buzzword, you see it all the time, but that's really what we facilitate. So the first thing that I do if someone comes to me and they say they want to homeschool, I ask them if they're familiar with the law, depending on what state they're from. And sometimes they're not familiar with it. And sometimes they say, can you homeschool my children for me? And so I understand that they haven't done the basic research for themselves first. And sometimes that's a little red flag for me about who I'm going to be dealing with, because some people come to me, they've done the research, they've already been looking at curriculum, they've already identified what kind of learner their child is. So that lets me know what kinds of services, what kind of support and guidance I'm going to have to provide for this family from the beginning. But during the admissions, there's three major things I look for then. What skills and abilities parents might already have, what kind of commitment, what kind of time commitment they have, and then also what kind of resources, financial resources they might have if they need to bring in other people, if they lack with the time commitment or the abilities or skills. So I start to have that conversation, and I ask a lot more questions than I tell, because I really want to find out where folks are so I can best empower them.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's quality over quantity. So you're not just letting just anyone in, you're qualifying them so that, because you don't want to set anyone up for failure. You want them to be fully aware, because the parent becomes the teacher, right? So they
Absolutely.
need to be fully committed to what it is. And of course, if we're just letting anyone in, then it can make the program look bad if they're not understanding it and following things. So you want to have a good give and take there. You want to give them the best and you want to receive the best. So you want to qualify them by understanding and educating them.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, is it's truly a collaboration. So that we're not telling the parents what they have to do. They need to come on board and be ready to engage. And then we collaborate and we bring the student in as well, as much as they're able to participate in that collaboration. How do they learn best? What would they like to learn? What are their strengths and talents? What challenges do they have? Because the whole world becomes the classroom. I've had people enroll, and this admissions process I do is very, I believe it's elaborate, because I've had parents say to me, I just want to I don't have time, I don't really want to do much, I just want to put my child in front of the computer and just let them do this online curriculum. And I always tell them, first of all, we don't have that. We don't have an online cookie cutter stationary curriculum that the kids go through. Everything is custom designed. Every course, all the objectives, the projects, everything is custom designed, because when you bring the student in as a collaborator and we design it, you get much more of that intrinsic motivation. So the child's not passive, the parent's not passive, they're very much engaged and buy into the whole curriculum because they helped design it. So I have that conversation. And also when the learning community first started, there was no one had an online no one had a laptop computer or family computer, so it was much more engaged, but people have defaulted to that. Not that we can't use that, but if someone tells me I don't have the time, I just want to put my child in front of a computer for an electronic, I actually refer them somewhere else. There are online schools like that. That's not what we advocate. And I explain to them that even if you're doing that with an online curriculum, you need to be aware of the level of engagement you need to have with your child. Because just imagine if parents were sending their kids to a traditional brick and mortar school, and they were putting kids in a classroom with just a computer, and then they left and said, we'll come back and check with you later, we'd be outraged. How, there's no interaction, there's no engagement, there's no, more dimensional kind of hands-on learning or discussion. So it's kind of it's not a realistic expectation and to have for your child. And I've seen people fail like that over time.
Yeah, I can see why. As you know, I work with kids, and I was just talking to a parent yesterday about their child and the emotions that kids are not taught how to deal with them, right? Because they're placed in these conformed schools, and they're like a pot of boiling water. They're placed on high heat, and then they're told when they can answer, how you're supposed to learn, and then you're in this conformity of subject to subject to subject, and then they're boiling up all day, and you're barely giving them time to take the lid off and let out their steam. So it comes out in behavioral issues, learning issues, and so on and so forth. And from what I understand with the homeschooling is you're doing programs, but you're doing activities, a lot of activities. So there's a lot of options on how your child learns, and you're identifying how this child learns. So not all children can sit in front of a computer. They could be kinesthetic. They need to go out and actually touch and feel, things. If they're going to do, let's just say, a project on a tree, they can't get on the computer and describe the whole tree. It's better for them to go out, feel the tree, talk about the kind of bark. And these are the things I think TLC promotes, because you're learning with the parent how the style of the child's learning abilities are. Is that what I'm hearing as well?
Yeah, we have a learner startup. Once people are enrolled, we provide a learner startup for the parents. And this is a questionnaire that is completed with the children that are enrolled and the parents. And you really flesh out and try to get your finger on the pulse of how my child learns best. Are they more artistic? Would they like to go out and watercolor that tree? Would they like to touch the tree? Do they want to photograph it? Do they want to write a poem about it? So we flesh out all of that, how the child learns best. That's the initial learner startup. But then what's also included throughout the year as we work with the families is we have a reflective journal. So once that customized, designed, individualized learning plan is put together and then implemented, there's a reflective journal both for parents and for the students. And the students can participate as much as they can at their level. A lot of times at the early elementary, parents are asking these reflective questions and diving a little bit deeper. What have they learned? How are they learning? What's working? What's not? Because we call our curriculum, our individualized learning path, a living curriculum. So through these reflective journals, again, that the parents write and the student write, if we need to make a change somewhere, if they need more rigor, less rigor, do they like math, but they don't like that math book they're using, we can tweak that along the way. So we make sure that it's always aligned with that intrinsic motivation of the child. So that reflective journal is a really important part that the advisor interacts with the parents and the kids with.
That is awesome. I know when my youngest was in school and later learned there was some learning issues, they wanted to go through the traditional stuff of trying to fix that issue to conform her into the classroom. And it was mentioned to me a few times about homeschooling, and I knew nothing about it. And I used to look at my husband at the time and say, oh, dear God, I can't let her know how dumb I actually am if I have to homeschool her, because I would be like, I don't know if I could get out of the third or fourth grade, if you know what I'm saying. Plus, I thought, I can't be with her all day long like that, you know? But then for some reason, I was out and about and I saw these groups of moms with their kids. And I was like, is it a school holiday? They're like, no, we're on a homeschool outing. We're doing educational training. We just went to such and such, and now we've written our report, and now we're having a picnic lunch. And I'm like, if I had known some of these things, I would have considered it back in the day. I would have considered it. But I thought it was very different than that until you and I have been doing some talking and I've learned about, and then to have that umbrella on top of that, to be able to have someone say, okay, and then I think you offer more things. You offer tutoring, you offer different teachers that teach different classes. You teach people how to get into the community and find other moms that are doing homeschooling so they can be brought together. So you're not in the house all day with your children or going on individual family outings with your children. You're amongst other people doing the same thing.
Right. You brought up a lot of points. And so I want to make sure I address each one. One of them is sometimes kids are not thriving in school and they might have an IEP, which you're familiar with, individualized educational plan, that once some kind of testing is done, then the schools look at if there's some kind of learning challenges, and they might accommodate the student different ways, and they create this learning plan, this educational plan. And so sometimes they're still not thriving, and parents go, I'm going to try to do this myself. Now they're homeschooling by themselves. And now they're trying to not only focus on their child, but they're trying to reach out in the community and find other resources to help them. And that takes a lot of time. So over, the 35 years that I've been working with families, I started identifying what are some of the challenges that homeschool parents are running into that I could add to our program to make it easier for parents. And so I started to find special education teachers and vet them, because not all special education teachers are the same. So I started vetting them and making sure they were aligned with our vision and our philosophy in the learning community. Also, math teachers are treasures to homeschool parents. And so I found the math teachers, both just traditional K through 12, as well as special education. And also English and reading. Writing and reading is the other one that parents, look for. So I started adding all of these subject matter experts to part of our enrollment as part of our services. So now parents have, if their child is struggling or something, they don't have to become everything, and they don't have to go out into the community and start beating the pavement to try to find. I've made those as part of our bank of resources to make it easier for parents. The other thing is, I told you I homeschooled 3 children, and they were at different ages. My daughters are 8 years apart, and then I have a son in the middle. So what I did is I reached out into my homeschooling community, and we created co-ops. Now, the parent who is doing this, if they're a major introvert, that doesn't come natural. I'm more extroverted. So I'm out there shaking hands, meeting people, going to parks, and finding the people that I need to create my community. But we have a lot of parents that come, they're not like that. They really don't even know where to begin. Things that I take as very natural as being an extrovert is not for someone who's introverted, or it's a drain on them. They might even have extroverted kids. Now they need to get out of their comfort zone and get into the community. So our advisors will help parents plug into their own community. And now with, all kinds of groups online, it's just a couple clicks of a switch, and you can find co-ops and, field trip groups and, interest-based groups like literature groups or homeschool robotics groups in your area. And then we can provide that to the parents and teach them how to go out there and look it up, and then tell them, you have to now go out of your comfort zone and meet people at some of these organizations. Now, one of the things might happen, you might love one of the women that you meet, but your kids don't get along. or the kids might really get along, and maybe that mother's not your cup of tea. So you have to kind of navigate these things, and it takes time to find those groups, and homeschoolers come and go. So what you put together one year might change the next year. Hence the reason that time and commitment that goes into creating your community is really important. Even if you have advisors that are putting you in the right direction, it still requires you to get out there and help develop that community for yourself.
Wow, that's a lot to offer. And you know, the other thing I was thinking too, when I was talking about like working on my own, like I need my child to always think I'm smart. And so if I don't know how to answer this math problem, we're in trouble. So you also offer, let's just say I'm at home and then I have to move into the math segment. I can have an online tutor be available, or perhaps maybe someone in the community group is better at that. I might be better at something else. We can help each other in that way as well. What would you recommend there?
Well, the first thing I would say, and I did this with my kids all the time, I was very honest with them. I'd say, wow, I don't really know the answer to that. And I used the libraries. I said, let's go to the library and look it up. Because I'm being honest with them that you don't have to know everything, but I'm also teaching them how to go find out, because you can't be expert at everything. So I would teach them, let's go find it out. Bookstores, you know, there wasn't a lot of research until my youngest daughter, who was born in 1990. But we would go to the libraries all the time. We became very good friends with the librarians, especially in the children's section. And so that was a major resource for me. Yes, the co-ops that I participated in, and I started some, and the smaller they were, the better. 7 to 10 families was tops, because otherwise, if you have too many, it just becomes this major thing to try to manage. So 7 to 10 families, and every year we get together and we break it into the semesters and say, what are your kids interested in, and what are your expertise? What would you? We were not dropping kids off in a section like we're handing it over. We were part of the resources. So I might be doing sign language, or I remember one time I did Shakespeare classes, and then someone else was doing a science class. So my kids were participating, and I was teaching some of the other kids. And my kids were being, art classes, cooking classes, whatever we decided that was exciting to the kids. And that was just a supplement. So we were doing that maybe once or twice a week. So we really worked together. There were no drop-offs, and you have to be really careful. If there's a drop-off and you're leaving your kids and they're doing most of it, that group runs the risk of looking like they're operating a private school without a license. So you have to be really careful about that. Because home education, not that you can't use other people, but if you're dropping your kids off every day and someone else is teaching them, eventually the state will catch up with that. And that would be, that co-op would, it could be practicing, a private school without a license. So, and again, my whole reason for home educating my kids is because I wanted to have my finger on the pulse of how they learned, so I didn't want to be giving that away all the time. Math, I was very good at giving the math away, but I also had the conversation with my children and also with that math tutor. What was working? What wasn't working? Where were their struggles? What are the things that we need to bring in manipulatives? What other things do we need to do for my child to be successful? So I had an intimate relationship, whatever subject matter expert that I used, especially at the elementary and middle school level.
Yeah, one of the things I keep hearing too is we're creating TLC and so on is creating the creative juices are always going within the children and within the parents. Because when you go to school, you're conforming to programs that are already set. And, I was talking to one of the moms of one of my student clients yesterday about the lack of recess, the lack of fresh air and sunshine, the lack of being able to get out there and do some subjects in a different way, because they have to conform to that program in which the school has to conform to, right? So there's not as much fun as it could be. And I think learning is always done better with some fun. And
Yeah,
that's self-empowering.
yeah, and I think sometimes I look at traditional school models in home education. It's kind of apples and oranges because you've got 30 kids maybe in the classroom, a variety of learning styles and the way people learn, and they've got a curriculum they have to get through and certain objectives, and that's a lot on a teacher, and trying to meet the needs of every child and every motivation level and every if there's a challenge or strength, and so it's definitely difficult to do. And I can tell you, even when people come and they decide they're going to home educate, and their child's not thriving, they've got a problem with the model there, and they start to home educate because it's a whole new paradigm, they end up defaulting to that old model because they don't feel comfortable stepping outside of the box. And so when their daughter, like we had a young man enroll recently, and he just graduated actually, and he wanted to do, I told you about him, earthquake proof dams. So the parent was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? And by mid-year, he was in his yard with bags of cement and building prototypes of dams and experimenting in his yard, taking pictures and having a whole method and system. And his parents were very nervous at first, and so it takes a while. There's a transition period for the students to say, I can study this if I want, they don't believe it at first. And also for the parents to transition because they feel safe in this template that they're used to, that they went through, that their kids were going through. And so we have to kind of hold their hands to step outside of the box where the whole world becomes the classroom. There was one young lady that we designed a course for that was the history of underwear. There was no course. We had to design it. We had to ask her, my dear young lady, what do you want to know, do, and value at the end of this course? And then we did a whole backwards design for it. So parents at first are nervous about it, and then we because we've been doing this for decades, and then it takes them, sometimes after the first year, they're like, okay, we got it now. We can step outside of the box.
Yeah, and what else I'm hearing, Nancy, is you've helped develop all of this just out of the demand for things that you've seen yourself through raising your 3 children in it and the communities in which you're in. Now your kids are grown and flourishing, and now you're helping others grow and flourish. And as we're going into this whole thing of schools changing, and some people don't have the belief system in certain things, you all are creating programs around that to help kids be more empowered. But this also helps to empower the family dynamics, whether you're a single parent or you're married or whatever. You're really empowering things from the heart as well as the mental stimulation.
Yeah, it's so, and people ask me, when are you going to retire? And,
Never.
and I'm like, no,
Knowing you.
I love what I do. And my personal mission is I felt so empowered, and my mentor is definitely the principal director of the learning community, Manfred Smith. And he helped me to believe in myself, and then I could actually, oops, sorry.
That's okay.
That I could actually empower my own children this way. And so I continue to do this. My mission is to empower women to empower their kids. And it is one of the most satisfying things that I do. So I will continue to do that. It's a real personal mission for me, and I'll do that until I leave the planet. And I did do that. I kept a real eye on what was working and what was not working for families. And so that all those years of reflecting, and Manfred and I have continued to, brainstorm and collaborate on what policies to put together within the learning community. Because Manfred always said, we have a frame, we have a system of how this private school works. But if it interferes with the learning and empowerment of the student, then we move it. So first comes in the individual needs and rights of the learner, then the parents, then the learning community. So we come right in and we look at, and we'll tell the parents, we understand let's talk about your need to have your child become, a mathematician because you are. But let's talk about what your child is, how he is developing, and what strengths he's showing that he would like to go on this way. We don't have to close the door over here, but let's give him this space to flourish and watch how it goes and reflect on it, see what's working, what's not. But let's not put him in this box, in this cookie cutter. So we're really sometimes really helping parents to see the bigger picture. And we also say, we've had some kids say, no, I can never go to college. I'm not smart. They come out of 9th grade or 8th grade and they have this mentality about themselves. I'm bad at this subject. I'm never going to go to college. I don't know what a reflection is. I don't want to do it. And as we guide, because I really see our advisors as mentors, by the end of the year, and I'm not saying every one of them, but at the end of the year, the success stories are the kids that are saying, oh my gosh, I didn't think I was going to be able to go to college. I'm going to be an engineer. I didn't think I was good in math. I thought I hated math, but I really didn't like the program I was in. I didn't like the curriculum I was using. And now that, to me, that's when we become so satisfied. And I'll have to tell you, I had an advisor working with us, and after a couple of years, and she was a provost at a private four-year university. And she ended up, long story short, she ended up retiring early so she can work with us full time. And sometimes some of her colleagues said, how could you keep working here? And she said, the reason I can still work at the college at the point she had before she retired, she said, because I have my learning community students. And those students are excited about learning. We can facilitate, the parents are engaged, and I'm participating in this amazing experience for those kids to be empowered. And that's where I find my satisfaction. And then eventually she said, I'm retiring early because I want to work with you full time. Of course, I was elated. And I get a lot of feedback from parents saying, I didn't know I could do this. And the learning community advisors helped me believe in myself. And that was my same experience I had from Manford. So we're perpetuating that,
No, I think that's awesome. And, I wish I had understood this better when my youngest was going through what she was going through, because I felt like, it always knocked on the door of, I'm not like the other kids. I just don't study and learn as easily as the other kids do. And therefore I'm less than, you know what I mean? And I wish I had known more of that. I myself fell into that, in the 60s and the 70s, because there was no other option, right? And it wasn't until I got creative and got out in my 30s that I learned that I could learn differently. I'm so glad that we have this now for children, so they don't have to do the struggles that, say, I went through, others went through, my youngest went through, that there's other alternatives here than just the standard programming of our school systems, right? There's options here. So I know I would really love for you to come back on again, and let's dive into this deeper. Let's reintroduce things maybe that we didn't dive into today. And is there anything else that you'd like to add to this conversation before we say anything?
I think I'm thinking more about what the next conversation could be. And I think, maybe we could talk about what some of those out of the box courses really look like. And by using the whole world as the classroom, because we talked a little bit about math and but the kinds of courses and opportunities, and a quick example, I think I might have told this to you, but we had a young lady that was attending a prep school in Washington, D.C., a high school, and she was in her last year, and she was an A student. She was in her last year, and she wanted to apply to an Italian fashion design school in England. And she said, I won't be able to do it in my last year. I need a portfolio, I need experience. So she came to the learning community, and her whole last year, she interned at a French boutique in DC. She traveled to New York and she dressed models. She did all kinds of things that aligned her to create this resume and the end of the year to apply to this design school that she would not have been able to do. And fast forward, she did it, she graduated, she went to the school, she graduated from the school, she met the love of her life. She's living in London now and working in the field, and she just recently had a baby. So that was just so out of the box. So there's so many possibilities. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that for more, so people could feel like, oh my gosh, that's a possibility for my daughter or my son that's not thriving in school. And so, you know, I think that might be something that, you know, we can talk about. And what I'd like to say, anyone, we have a 30-minute complimentary discovery conference. Anyone can call me. We'll do a Zoom 30 minutes to kind of flesh out, to see what their needs are, to see if homeschooling or the learning community might be a good match for them.
Wow, that's awesome. I just got chills all over when you were telling that story. That's amazing. Well, Nancy, thank you so much for joining us today. And
Oh, you're
viewers, we
welcome.
really do appreciate your likes, your subscribes, your shares, and your comments. And we look forward to seeing you on part 2. Say bye, Nancy.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.